Welcome to Passion for Sound, the channel dedicated to thorough and honest reviews of headphones, earphones, DACs, headphone amps, other components and accessories. Basically everything audio related except power amps and passive speakers. My name's Lachlan and my goal is to explore and discuss all kinds of audio topics, even the controversial ones, to help us all find more enjoyment from music. Thanks for watching and enjoy the video. Hey folks, welcome to another Passion for Sound audio review and another of the micro reviews that I'm doing this week to get through a couple of unusual products that don't necessarily warrant a fully fledged 20-30 minute review like I normally do, but I do believe each of these deserves to be talked about a little bit. And for this review, we're talking about the upgrade cable from Meze Audio for their Meze Empyrean headphones here. I've now got 3 different cables for the Meze Empyreans, so I'm going to talk you through what I see as the pros and cons of each of the different cables, including the stock cable, an aftermarket one from a different company, and then Meze Audio's own super duper silver plated upgrade cable. I should start off by saying that if you're not a believer in headphone cables making a difference, you're probably not going to like this video. I've got 3 cables here that each have their own distinct sonic character. It's not even close, they don't even almost sound the same, they are completely different. So if you're not a believer in that, either watch along and try to keep an open mind, or do feel free to switch off now. Please don't get into abusing me or anybody else down in the comments because you don't think cables make a difference. You're of course completely entitled to that opinion, I just don't want to see abuse of other people or me down in the comments for us having different beliefs around this. So with that out of the way, let's start talking cables. When I received my Meze Empyreans, they came with the original stock cable. I didn't buy an upgrade cable at the time. I always like to start with a headphone with its basic cable before thinking about any upgrades. And this would have to be one of the very first times I've received a headphone and pretty early on felt like maybe it did need a better cable, that maybe its sound was being held back by the cable. In terms of its build quality, the stock cable is fantastic. It's got really nice quality connectors at each end, it's got a nice fabric weave around it, and there's really nothing you can complain about. It's beautifully made, it feels good, it's a great length, there's really, from a design point of view, nothing at all wrong with it. But I always felt like the Empyreans just had more to give. I don't know why I felt that. It was just an instinct thing that I always thought they had more to give. My first step down that path was to buy myself an aftermarket cable that I'll talk about soon, and I have reviewed here previously on the channel. And then I was chatting to the supplier of the Meze Empyreans here in Australia, and we started talking about the upgrade cables. Now I'm almost always a believer that copper cables sound the best. I'm not into fancy metals, I don't tend to enjoy silver plated cables or silver cables, and so when he suggested to me that I really should try the silver plated cable, I thought it was a chance to kind of test my assumptions and see if I did consistently not enjoy silver plated cables, or maybe if it was a case that I hadn't yet heard the right one. And that's how we ended up here with me having this cable on my desk. So this is Meze Empyrean's own silver-plated ultra-pure copper cable designed specifically for the Meze Empyreans. It's a 2.5 meter cable that will set you back a whopping $499 US, which is about 670 Australian dollars. That equates to about $200 US per meter. So it is not a cheap cable by any stretch. In fact, some would say it's an insane amount to pay for a cable. I have to admit, I was really skeptical and really nervous about spending money on a cable like this because there comes a point at which you do have to question the return on investment. In the name of transparency, I do want to thank the local supplier of the Meze Empyreans for helping me purchase the cable at a reduced price to make this review possible. I recognise it's a really big outlay to spend full retail on a cable like this. It's maybe not an investment that I would have been in a position to make had he not helped out with the price in order for me to be able to do this review. But I do also want to put this into context and remind you that we're talking about a many $1,000 headphone here. This is not some cheap headphone where this is like the same price as the headphone. Spending $500 on a cable to go with a headphone that's a couple of $1,000 or $3,000, whatever it is, that makes a bit more sense in terms of the proportions of the cable to the headphone itself. I know some people will still feel like it's too much. That's totally fine, but I did want to share with you my thoughts on how this stacks up, given the price of the headphone, the value of the cable, and as you'll hear me talk about in a moment, the quality of the cable. And with that in mind, let's talk about what you're getting. So the cable here is a pure copper cable with silver plating. So it's not a pure silver cable. It is a very high quality copper with silver plating over the top. The wire itself is a very high quality wire from Furukawa, and it's designed as a very, very pure single crystal design. Now, I'm not heavily into the metallurgy of cables and what goes into the making of them exactly, but I do know a little bit from my previous research on other reviews and also general experience using different cables over the years. And what generally matters the most in terms of cable quality and how it sounds is the purity of the metals involved. So what you want is a cable that is truly oxygen free, because oxygen is one of the impurities that will mess with the sound of the cable. And the other one is a single crystal. What that means when we're talking about single crystal copper or single crystal metal of any sort is that you don't have any kind of gaps or breaks in the copper along the wire. And what that means, as I understand it, is you're going to get a clean signal from one end to the other without any breaks or barriers that might cause slight reflections, slight interruptions to the flow of the electrons. That, again, keeping in mind things like our brain's accuracy on timing information, even tiny little hiccups in the way the electrons are being delivered could theoretically deliver a slight alteration in the qualities that we hear at the other end of the wire. Now, I'm not going to get into the details there because I'm not qualified to, and some of what I've just said is just my own theories on why some cables sound different to others. What I know for sure, having played around with different cables over the years, is that the higher the purity, the better the sound. That much is really simple. And so what we've got here is a very high purity copper with a very high quality single crystal silver plating over the top, based on what I can read in the marketing info. It's all woven together and then soldered using a high quality 4% silver solder. What that again means is that because the solder is acting as a part conductor in here, the higher quality of the solder, the better the conduction at each of the joins. Now, other than the quality of the wire itself, and whether or not it sounds good we'll talk about in a second, but other than that, one of the things that's really worth mentioning is that when you buy a cable at this level, you want to be getting a high quality feeling and usable cable, like an ergonomically good cable, for your money. And the good news is you absolutely are. This cable is soft, it's supple, but it's really sturdy. It's a tight braid that's in sort of a square pattern when it's finished. It's really supple but really sturdy, as I've said. It's got beautiful Meze branded wire splitter here, and then Meze branded plugs at each end. It uses the mini XLR for the Empyreans, of course, which means this would also work on Aurealis headphones. It would work on the ZMF headphones as well. So it is a cable that potentially has multiple uses. And so from an ergonomics and physical quality point of view, it's also really, really beautiful. It's one of the nicest cables I've ever held. It's not too heavy, but it is relatively lightweight, so you don't feel like it's pulling down on the headphones when you wear it. It's really just a joy to use from an ergonomic perspective. And so at this point, all I can tell you is that physically and on paper, this cable absolutely justifies its price tag. Or at least let's say that it justifies being a premium cable. So I'm not going to try and say that it is or it isn't worth $499 US. That's probably up to each individual to decide. But what I will say is it is a premium feeling cable, and it's also, based on the specs on paper, a premium quality cable. So then, of course, the question comes down to how does it sound? And all I can say is that if you've heard the Empyreans with the stock cable, you haven't heard anything. When you plug this in, it is an absolute transformative process for them as Empyreans. It blew my mind when I listened to this. Now, I've tried headphones with different cables before, and I am a believer in cables making a bit of a difference. I have never heard a difference to the degree that this cable has made. As I said at the outset, I'm not normally a fan of silver-plated cables, or pure silver cables for that matter. Almost every single time I bought a cable, I've gone with pure copper, and I've been very happy with that choice because I find it maintains the original qualities of the headphone in most cases, keeps things smooth, but can still bring out all the details without forcing anything in your face. In the case of the upgrade cable for the Meze Empyreans, my dislike of silver-plated cables is totally out the window. This is a fantastic combination with the Meze Empyreans. The sound is immediately far more detailed, far more open, and far more spacious when compared to the stock cable. The best part of that though is that it doesn't come at the cost of any harshness or over brightness in the sound. It's quite remarkable in fact that putting this cable onto the Empyreans is just removing a veil and allowing you into a little bit more detail in the sound from the Empyreans. At the same time, it opens up the soundstage, maybe a little bit of depth, but mostly width in the soundstage, and makes the overall sound more energetic, lively, but still smooth and very, very enjoyable. If I had to level any criticism at all at the sound from the silver-plated cable, it would be that it does perhaps ever so slightly reduce the sense of focus in the image, and that's probably because it is spreading out the sound a bit more. In the case of the stock cable, things are more intimate and therefore it does create a tighter focus of the sound. That said, I would definitely choose the silver-plated upgrade cable over the stock cable every single time. But that of course then begs the question, is this the only way to get that benefit? After I got the Empyreans and not wanting to spend the full price tag on the Meze branded cable, I reached out to local Australian cable manufacturer Aurealis Audio. Now I've reviewed this cable here on the channel before. This is what I bought from Jeff at Aurealis Audio for the Meze Empyreans specifically. This is a pure copper Litz cable, meaning that each individual strand of copper is encased in its own insulation. Litz has its own benefits to the sound quality. Both uninsulated stranded cables and the individually insulated Litz cables have their own advantages and drawbacks to the sound. Or maybe not drawbacks, just their own advantages. Each of them does something a little bit better. Now in the case of the upgrade cable here, this is a stranded design where each strand is copper that's then silver plated but not insulated before it's wound together. In the case of this Aurealis cable, it's pure copper with a plastic insulation around it, and then those wires are twisted into the bundle, but each of the wires is therefore kept separate from each other except at each end where it connects up to the connectors. To put things into perspective, this cable from Aurealis Audio would retail at around about $100 per meter compared to the $200 a meter for the Meze Empyrean one. This is also finished really nicely. It's got this nice soft cotton paracord wrapping over it. It is quite supple and easy to work with as well. Probably a little bit more prone to tangling than the Meze one, but only ever so slightly. Overall, it's a joy to use. It's light, it's supple, it's soft to touch as well. It's really enjoyable. It lacks the fancy wire splitter of something like the Meze cable and instead just has heat shrink, but it's completely fine for me. Finally, the connectors at the end are still a high quality Rean connector, REAN. Don't know if I'm saying that right, hopefully I am. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with the Aurealis cable here. It feels the part of a quality aftermarket cable. It doesn't have some of the flash and the style of the Meze cable, but from a usability point of view, I think it's completely fine. So having covered off that it's maybe not quite as flashy as the Meze cable, the big question at about half the price per meter is how does the Aurealis audio cable sound compared to the significantly more expensive Meze cable? The Aurealis cable was a significant upgrade over the stock cable. It opened up the soundstage a bit. It definitely provided a greater sense of resolution, and to me gave me what I wanted from the Meze Empyreans that I felt the stock cable wasn't providing. And what I'd say is that the Aurealis cable is exactly what I think the stock cable from the Empyrean should have been. It brings a bit more detail, it opens up the soundstage a little bit, and it's generally just a more enjoyable listen and a more engaging listen because of all that extra clarity that it brings. That said, it doesn't hold a candle to what the Meze cable does. The Meze cable reveals details that you still can't hear with the Aurealis cable, as good as the Aurealis cable is. And that's not a knock on the Aurealis cable, that's just going to show just how good the Meze cable is and why it is a premium cable and therefore more justifying of the price tag. I can see an argument for sticking with the Aurealis cable because it does produce a slightly more intimate soundstage and an overall smoother sound. That also results in a slightly more focused image and less overall pulling apart and separations of the sound. So it does depend a little bit on your tastes, but I think most people would thoroughly enjoy the upgrade cable, the silver-plated upgrade cable with the Meze Empyreans as the ultimate version of what these headphones can produce. And so with that in mind, what I'd say to you is that if you've got the Empyreans and you are looking to get the absolute most out of them, it is absolutely worth thinking about buying Meze's own upgrade cable. It is a fairly hefty price tag to swallow, but I believe that it is absolutely worth it in every potential aspect. There's the build quality, there's the look of it, the feel of it, and then of course there's the sound of it. As I said before, this to me is one of the biggest sonic upgrades I've ever heard from a cable. The Aurealis audio cable was a nice step forwards, and at its price of about $200 to $250 Australian dollars, depending on the length of course, so let's say $100 US per meter, at that price it's pretty affordable for some nice upgrades. So I'd definitely say that if you're in the market for an upgrade cable and you don't have the budget for the silver plated, then do have a think about the Aurealis cable. But at the same time, if you want the absolute maximum performance, the best of the best for the Empyreans, I do think the silver-plated upgrade cable from Meze Audio is absolutely the way to go. If that's something that you're interested in, I'll put a link down below through to both the Meze store for their own upgrade cables and also through to Aurealis Audio, where you can contact Jeff and have a chat to him about your cable needs. As always, I hope you found this review useful. If you have, I'd love it if you'd hit the subscribe button and the like button to make sure that you get to see other videos from me in the future, and also to help YouTube know to share this video with other people like you. In the meantime though, I'll leave you to the music, so happy listening, and I'll see you here next time on Passion for Sound.